From Anshe Sfard Beth El Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to the discussion of Parshat Vayechi, Giants of Exile or Israel. If we look at the bracha that Yaakov gives to his grandchildren, Ephraim and Manasseh, as Rabbi Vayechi pointed out, the first forefather who spoke to his grandchildren, had a relationship with his grandchildren, gave a bracha to his grandchildren. Yaakov gives a bracha to Ephraim and Manasseh. What does he say? That with you, everyone will bless their children and say, Yisimcha Elokim k'Ephraim and Manasseh. May God make you, my child, like Ephraim and Manasseh. Beautiful. Most of the commentaries, the classic commentaries, take it for granted that it's a nice bracha to be like Ephraim and Manasseh, two of the tribes of Israel, the grandchildren of Yaakov. Very nice. Perhaps based on Rabbi Vayechi's idea that the Ephraim and Manasseh were the first grandchildren to be connected to their grandfather in the Jewish chain. Perhaps we're saying that may you be like Ephraim and Manasseh, who were connected to their grandparents, connected to the tradition of Israel. There have been many suggestions in more recent years as to why Ephraim and Manasseh. Why don't we want to be like Yehuda and Yosef, or Avraham and Yitzchak? Or why Ephraim and Manasseh? So, in more recent years, explanations have been given. Rabbi Reuven Monk, who was a rabbi in Berlin before the war, he said that Ephraim and Manasseh are particularly important figures to mention throughout Jewish history because they survived exile. They grew up in Egypt, they never lived in Israel, and yet they were worthy children of Yaakov. He was willing to make them into tribes. They had reached that level of being a tribe, Shivtei Kad, the tribes of God, and it must be that they maintained their Abrahamic identity even in the land of Egypt. So too for centuries. So important to give our children that blessing that no matter where they live, even if they're in exile, they should be like Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, this means that why Ephraim and Manasseh? Because Ephraim and Manasseh are particularly good role models for exile. They're giants of the exile. They are experts at the exile. They've got the exile down pat. They're the perfect exemplars of how to live a godly life in exile, not in the holy land of Israel. Comes Rabbi Tamir Granot, who lives in Israel today, and he wasn't so comfortable with this. He doesn't. That doesn't speak to him. I should bless my children. They should live properly in exile. His children live in the land of Israel, thank God. So he doesn't get it. So he came up with the opposite interpretation. That actually, these are not giants of exile. These are giants of Israel. Israel, they don't live in Israel. So then it develops the following theory. It says, just because you live in Egypt doesn't mean you can't have any property in the land of Israel. In fact, we wonder, why is it that when Reuven and Gad, two tribes, said to Moshe, look, we want to live here, and we just conquered Sichon and Og. We want to live here. So let's live here. So Moshe got mad, and then he said, all right, fine, you could live there. And by the way, half of the tribe of Manasseh is going to live here too. Who suggested that? Where did that come from? You're telling me, Moshe, that it's not a good idea to live on this side of the Jordan. You're really supposed to live on the other side of the Jordan where the other tribes live. So if it's such a terrible idea, and how dare Reuven and Gad suggest they live over there on the eastern bank of the Jordan, if it's so terrible, why did you, Moshe, decide that Manasseh should live half over here and half over there? Now, Rav Meidan, I believe it was, suggested that when Yaakov switches his hands and puts Manasseh, who's on his right, in his left hand, and puts Ephraim, who's on his left, on his right hand, what he was saying was, if I was to reject you completely, and Manasseh would be completely on the wrong bank of the Jordan, like all the rejects, Esav, the Edom, and Lot, Ammon and Moab, and Reuven and Gad, who's the oldest tribe of Leah, and because he asked to live out there, if I would move the kids over and say that Manasseh is on my left side, then I'd put Manasseh completely on the left side. But I'm leaving Manasseh half on this side, half on that side. So that's why he came. Manasseh was chosen. So that he was rejected partially, not completely. As we see here, Yaakov kind of rejected Manasseh. All the rejects go on the eastern bank. He's not worthy of being in the land of Israel. One could also suggest that Moshe brilliantly wanted to, or God wanted to connect the Jewish people on the eastern bank with the western bank. There should be one nation. So if half the family of Menashe is on this side, half on the other, surely they're not going to have a civil war. There will remain one nation. Good. However, Rav Granot says no. That's not why he was chosen. You know why Menashe was chosen to get part of the land? Because Menashe had real estate in the east bank of the Jordan. How do we know that? Well, later on it says in Parshat Matot that the children of Machir ben Menashe, they went to Gilad, which is up there in the Golan Heights, and they conquered it. So he gave the Gilad to them, and they settled there. There was a fellow named Yair ben Menashe, also lived a long time, and he also conquered the cities, and they gave it to him. Now, Machir. So who's this Machir? So we look at the end of this parsha, and it says that Yosef was very blessed. He got to see grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So it says that he saw 3 generations. Even the children of Machir were born on the knees of Joseph. So what does that mean? That the children of Machir lived in the days of Joseph. And it says over here in Parshat Matot, the children of Machir conquered the Gilad. Suggests Rav Granot, and he didn't make it up, there are others, modern commentators, who came up with this idea, that maybe in the days of Joseph, children of Machir were alive. Children of Menashe and Machir were alive. They decided that even though they live in Egypt, they're going to have real estate, like many people do in other countries, namely in the eastern bank of the Jordan. When Moshe comes and conquers it, they come and say, hey, this is our real estate over here. So Moshe said, okay, fine, you can have this real estate. So it turns out that although Ephraim and Menashe lived in exile, they were very Zionistic. They were very pro-Israel. They were very Israel-oriented. They decided, hey, even though we live here in Egypt, we should have some land and some interest in the eastern bank of Israel, which is part of broader Israel. And some of it's not there today, but in many periods of Jewish history, the eastern bank of Jordan was also, the northeastern bank of the Jordan was part of Israel. So they said, hey, let's get a piece of the action. So indeed, they had a piece of the Transjordan, which shows the great love that Ephraim and Menashe had for Israel. We know that the first conqueror of Israel is Yoshua from the tribe of Ephraim. We know that people who said we must have a piece of Israel were the daughters of Tzlafchad from Menashe. Tzlafchad ben Chefer ben Yair ben Menashe, he's from Yair, from that family of Yair. Yair was also a great conqueror. We see that there are these people named Machir and Yair, Giladi, who took an interest in conquering the land of Israel, whether it was, according to Rabbi Granot's theory, earlier on, or whether it was early on in the conquest, namely when Moshe was conquering those areas, these people personally went and conquered these particular cities. So the people of Ephraim and Menashe are particularly lovers of Israel. In fact, there's a midrash that they went too early and they got killed. They were the Mapilim. They were the people who went too early to conquer Israel. So it turns out, according to Rav Granot, the Ephraim and Menashe you get the blessing of Ephraim and Menashe because even though they lived outside of Israel, they continued to have a great interest and a great activity in the land of Israel. And the reason we're blessing them because they're giants of Israel, of love of Israel. According to Rabbi Vayechi, according to Rabbi Berlin, the idea of Ephraim and Menashe, what's so great about them is even though they're born in Egypt, they're still part of the Jewish people. The whole idea is that they're great exemplars of exile. And maybe the two ideas are the same. Meaning, they are great exemplars of being Jewish in exile. And you know what it means to be Jewish in exile? You have real estate in Israel. You take an interest in Israel. You invest in Israel. You take an interest in the politics of Israel and what's going on in Israel. And what kind of government do they have? What kind of leadership do they have? What kind of activities do they do? Are they following the proper policies? Aren't they? You buy an apartment. You go visit. You send your kids there. There is a way to be an exilic Jew, is to be connected to the land of Israel and to love the land of Israel and eventually to go and to conquer and to live and settle in the land of Israel. So there's this question. Why do we say Why do we say that our children should be like Ephraim and Manasseh? What's the big deal? Is it that they were such great Jews, great followers of God, even in Egypt, which is a bastion of immorality? Or is it that they were such lovers of Israel, even though they lived in exile? Either way, they were great Jews. Therefore, it's appropriate to wish our children, may our children be like Ephraim and Manasseh. May our children be devoted, no matter where they live, in Israel or outside of Israel, devoted to the land of Israel, devoted to God, devoted to the principles of morality and goodness as outlined by God in the Torah, and hopefully, eventually, their children, like Manasseh and like Ephraim, will eventually go to the land of Israel. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshe Sfar Beth Lameth congregation for our discussion of the Parsha and the holidays. Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit asb.org.